Well, the Biden administration is not yet done with their purge of all things Trump. Now, the current administration has been getting a lot of news coverage regarding its decision to force Trump administration appointees to resign from military academy boards or face firing. Last week, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked about the president's purge.
And the president's objective is what any president's objective is to ensure you have nominees and people serving on these boards who are qualified to serve on them and who are aligned with your values. And so, yes, that was an ask that was made.
Joining me now is former Trump White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, who was one of those who got the resign or be fired ultimatum. Sean is a Navy Reserve officer. He is also the host of Newsmax's Spicer and Company and the author of Radical Nation, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's Dangerous Plan for America. Sean, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Good to be with you, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Well, first, Sean, thanks for your service to our country. I respect, as a military veteran myself, I respect everyone who served in our nation's military honorably, whether they're Democrat or Republican. That's one thing that's been nice about our military in times past, is it was not politicized. We're seeing that under this administration.
Yeah, frankly, it's sad. And, I said at the time, Tony, I don't, some of us, like you and I, have chosen to serve in uniform. Some people serve the country in different ways, join a PTA, help in their community in some other ways. I don't judge how you want to serve America. That's your call. But as I said to Jen Psaki last week, don't you dare ever question how I've chosen to serve this, and don't question my qualifications or experience. I've spent 22 years in uniform. I've served under 5 different presidents, several awards and decorations, graduate of the U.S. Naval War College. And for her to stand there in the White House briefing room and talk about qualifications, and it's not just me. Think about H.R. McMaster, a 3-star general who taught at West Point, who this past weekend was given West Point's highest alumni honor. General Jack Keane, a 4-star, who's former vice chief of the Army. Lieutenant General Guy Swan, who was the former chief of Army North. All of these folks she's deeming unqualified. And Jen, I know she's never served in the military, but I have a hard time believing that she could stand there and call into mind the qualifications of so many of these other individuals. Megan Mops, an Afghan vet and West Point grad. Same thing. For Jen to sit there, and again, she's never served. I'm not questioning her commitment or service to the country, but to question our qualifications to serve on military academy boards, I found really, really disrespectful and repugnant.
So let me ask you this question, Sean. What qualifications do they require? You've got, as you said, 22 years in uniform. You've served.
But Tony, think about this for a second, because I bring this up in Radical Nation, and it was so fortuitous that this happened. I have a chapter on the people in the administration and their qualifications. Take Dennis McDonough. He's now heading the Veterans Administration. He's never served in the military, never served on the board of a veteran service organization. He's never been in healthcare, which is one of the largest aspects of the VA. Mm-hmm. And so what are his qualifications? I'm not sure. Aside from being an Obama loyalist, what are his qualifications? What were Pete Buttigieg's qualifications? Because when the president thanked him after he'd been confirmed, he brought up his sexuality, not his qualifications. This administration, if they want to judge people by their qualifications, they might want to go back to square one.
Well, that's my point, is that qualifications for them is not your ability to perform the function, but it is the ideological box that you check on the left. That appears to be the qualifications they're looking for.
That's it. And I literally, like I said, I have a whole chapter about this, because they will go out and seek people who check boxes rather than who are the most qualified. That's their idea. It's all about this inclusion and equality rather than qualification. And it's funny because, I get a kick out of the fact that when you talk about people on a military service academy that are thinking about the future of the training and the education, the curriculum that's needed for the officers that will guide and lead, in this case, the Navy in the future, you would want, or think you would want, people who have that kind of experience.
Right.
And it just, frankly, and then let's get to point two. This is unprecedented in history. No president has ever gotten rid of the previous president's Academy Board picks, ever. Full stop in history. President Trump, President Obama, President Bush, Clinton, Carter, go all the way back, right? And this is a White House who came in office saying, we're going to be the president for all people. We're going to unify the country. I have 3 months left on my term. 3 months. One more meeting, and I would have been done anyway. And yet this is how they treat people. I mean, it's about personal pettiness and politics rather than bringing the country together in qualifications. And frankly, from what we have pushed back on, it's also in violation of the law. There's a reason they, at least as of this moment, haven't responded, because I think that they thought by bullying people that they would submit their resignations and just go, oh, shucks. But that's not happening.
Yeah, a couple of points there. Number one, I just want to make very clear, they sent you a letter. Also, Kellyanne Conway was one of those mentioned. They said a letter, either resign by 6 p.m. this evening, if I recall correctly, or you'll be fired. Is that essentially
Correct.
what they communicated?
Yeah, the actual word was terminated, but yes.
So the reason these boards and commissions like this are structured the way they are, and I serve on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, and I know how it is structured. I was not appointed by Trump. I was appointed by Mitch McConnell. But they're structured so that they are created to be as nonpartisan as possible, where politics does not get in. A president has a term that he appoints someone to. It often overlaps with another administration, and that's fine. That's the way it was structured. What we see here is an attempt to politicize the service on these boards and the boards themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. There are Obama people that were on the Academy board. There are Obama people that were on the West Point board. I'm sure there were some on yours. You don't join a board like this or the one that you mentioned if you're not committed to the overall goal. Like, there's no Republican or Democrat Navy, perspective. We want the strongest, best trained Navy. We want the best officers. And so it's not a partisan thing. It's people who are committed to that, who have the experience to say this is what we should be doing to ensure that level of education is provided to them. They are the ones injecting politics into this. I mean, and that's the funny thing. If this was Trump, people would be losing their mind. And the idea that all of the folks in the White House press corps, and that's where I actually am almost more disappointed, is Jen Psaki goes out there and without any military basis or qualification or history in her behalf states that all of us are unqualified, and yet not one person in the White House press corps says, wait, you know what, okay, we don't like Spicer, I get it. But what about McMaster? What about Jack Keane? What about Guy Swan? All of these other folks. Not one of these people who would have thrown a hissy fit if Trump had done this says a word.
Yeah. Maybe it's they don't like your dancing. Is that what it is?
Well, I can see that. I would agree with them on that.
Hey, in your book, Radical Nation, the tagline is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, a dangerous plan for America. Is what we see unfolding here, where they're trying to purge the previous administration appointees from these boards, is that a part of that dangerous plan you talked about?
Absolutely. What I'm trying to explain to people is to pull back. See, I think that, as I mentioned, Dennis McDonough, for example, the confirmation process was a joke. The Republicans let all of these guys slide by. The policies that they're pursuing, whether it's purging people, D.C. statehood, packing the courts, allowing people to come over our southern border, are all in pursuit of a permanent Democratic majority that can institute progressive policy. You have to understand the ultimate goal. It's not a bunch of one-offs. It's not, okay, I got to help my friend here. It's not, oh, I want to just make D.C. a state because it's good. I want to pack the court. You have to understand the ultimate goal that they are trying to achieve, which is this Democratic permanent majority. Once you have that,
right,
then you can institute progressive policy after progressive policy infinitum and never have to worry about stopping, because you have the power to do that. And so this is all about an ultimate power grab. There's a reason when conservatives say to me, Sean, Kamala Harris isn't doing her job stopping immigration at the southern border, I look at them and I go, yes, she is. If you understand their goal, which is to allow these people to come over the southern border because it presents to them a future Democratic base vote, then it makes sense. She is not trying to stop them. And once you understand that, it becomes so much clearer what's really happening. So all of this, the reason they're purging people off of these military academy boards isn't just because it felt good on a Wednesday morning to do it. It's because if there's not proper oversight, if all of the people are loyal to Biden, then they can seep in critical race theory into all of the military service academies, and nobody's there to push back. If you've got a Sean Spicer or an H.R. McMaster or a Megan Motz, we're going to say, wait a second, why are we talking about critical race theory in the academy curriculum? And as soon as you realize that all of this is in pursuit of that greater goal, you get it.
Yeah, there is a master plan here, and you're absolutely right. To the fair-thinking, democratic, grounded mind that wants to protect the republic, it doesn't make sense. But to advance the left's agenda, it makes perfect sense what they're doing. Sean, very quickly before I'll let you go, the president didn't have the legal foundation. You made reference to this in passing a moment ago, that you've not heard back. You've threatened to file suit if you have to. You're not going to resign. They've been silent. So where's this stand?
Well, that's a good question, Tony. I mean, I think I don't think they anticipated the pushback. So now the question is, do they look at that and say, do we really want to litigate this? Because here's the question that's interesting from a conservative standpoint. Let's say that they go ahead and say, fine, Sean, we're going to push back on you legally, and I lose. You know who wins? The executive branch, which means that the next time the Republicans come in, because what they are saying ultimately is the executive branch has full and absolute power, something that Democrats have never argued for. So by kicking me off and kicking all of us off, frankly, they're actually handing conservatives a win. And it's interesting. They don't think that they realize that they've put themselves into a corner. Either they let me ride my term out, which I think, frankly, would just be the smart thing to do, or secondly, they fight this out legally to the point where they recognize, holy smokes, we've just granted a win to everybody who believes that the executive branch now has the power to do these things.
Well, I would say with a little caveat there, Sean, is that you have to have a president like President Donald Trump that's willing to fight. And because too often we get Republicans who, they won't fight. They won't fight the way the Democrats do. They let the Democrats run over them. Trump, that's why they hated him, is because
Tony, I had this
fought.
conversation 3 times this morning. Republicans have got to start getting it through their thick skulls that you can't hang out with the left-wing media, hang out with all these guys, and somehow think they're going to be your friend.
Yeah.
We need to learn to fight for our principles and our values and stop playing patty cake, thinking that somehow if we just are better than them, they'll repay the favor. Look at what Nancy Pelosi did, kicking off those members of the January 6th Commission, which was unprecedented. If Kevin McCarthy doesn't do the same thing when we take back the House of Representatives, shame on him. And you're absolutely right. Donald Trump was the only one who stood up and said, you know what? I'm not going to play by their rules, and that's what we need more of on the right.
I agree 100%.
And by the way, Donald Trump's going to be on my program tonight. I'm going to ask him about this and get his take on what he thinks about what the Biden administration has done.
Well, we'll be watching, and I'll encourage others to watch as well. Sean, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us.